NASCAR Silly season is in full swing, y'all, and we're about to get right into it here on the return of Spencer Talks NASCAR. That's right, we are back. Couldn't stay away for long. I'm your host, Spencer Urquhart here. Silly season up 2025. Speculation through the roof. We've actually, though, gotten a lot of confirmed drivers and teams for 2025, but there was some breaking news recently that just got the silly season wheel turning once again. LaJoie has been released by Spire Motorsport. LaJoie looked like it was going to be a mainstay over at Spire, but he won't be. He will be released at the end of this season. So, yeah, that's the big recent news. 2025 NASCAR Silly season news is going crazy. So, we're going to get into it here with an update. We're going to go through all the teams, going to pull up the J-Ski Silly season chart and break down which teams still have openings and try to figure out what drivers are going to take over those openings. Because now that we've got the Spire number 7 opened up, we've got that seat as well as the RWR 15, the Kaulig 16, which have been split by various drivers this season. And in the front row third car, not sure the number yet, but probably 36, I would think, to go with the 34, 38. And then the 2311 in Trackhouse third cars, assuming they buy those open Stewart-Haas charters. It is expected they will buy those, but they're going to have to get a charter deal done, NASCAR and the teams. That's been a big issue. Denny Hamlin continues to pound the table saying that the teams are not getting a fair deal from NASCAR. We'll have an episode on that in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But this one's going to be the 2025 silly season follow-up predictions episode. So we'll see. We're going to break it down here. Let's pull up the chart, y'all. And we're going to just go over everything real quick for those that need updates. Stewart-Haas thing, I think everyone knows that. But as far as where everyone is going, Josh Berry ended up landing with the Wood brothers. Noah Gregson in the front row. Chase Briscoe to JGR, replacing the retiring Martin Truex Jr., and then Ryan Preece, still a free agent, searching for a ride there. 3 of the charters will be sold. One's been sold already to front row. The other one will be kept by Gene Haas, but he called the Haas Factory team. Going to keep the number 41 with Cole Custer driving that car. Cole Custer returning into 41 after 2 years in the Xfinity Series. And I got to say, I think he's earned that because Ryan Preece hadn't really performed any better in the 41 than Custer did. And Custer has performed admirably in the Xfinity Series. So I think that was a well-deserved thing, even though his dad is a big stake in the team. Some people could say, oh, Nepo, but I don't really see that as Nepo. I think Custer earned that seat back. So he will be in a single car Haas Factory team next season with a technical alliance from RFK. So it's considering how good RFK Racing has been this season. Custer might have hope there for the Haas Factory team. But Riley Herbst favored to drive the third 2311 car. That's old news. I don't think he is the favorite anymore. If anything, it's looking like that third 2311 car is probably going to be split amongst multiple drivers, assuming it happens, considering that Truex is now retiring. Denny Hamlin said if he wants a Daytona 500 seat, he's got it. So I feel like unless they make a fourth car just for him part-time, which is possible. If they can find a full-time guy for the third car, they'll probably do that. But I feel like Herbst could go elsewhere, potentially front row or Spire. I definitely think Herbst lands a full-time Cup ride next year, considering he brings funding. He's one of the few guys here that brings funding and has some talent. Riley Herbst, no slouch. Maybe not quite as deserving as some guys, but, I mean, he brings funding, and he's got a fair amount of talent. Was an Xfinity win this year, won a race last year as well. So we'll see where Herbst goes, but I think he might end up being the next domino to fall. Either him or Zane Smith. He's on loan from Trackhouse to Spire this year. And now that LaJoie is gone, Zane Smith could return to Spire. The door is open now for him to stay, but he also might want to take his talents elsewhere if the Trackhouse deal is no longer there. But I think the Trackhouse deal is a multi-year deal, so I would think he would stay in the Chevy pipeline and either stay at Spire, go to the third Trackhouse car, assuming Trackhouse gets that third charter, or go to Kaulig if they decide to move on from Daniel Hemrick. So I think Zane Smith will have a full-time ride next year. It's just a matter of where he ends up. But Shane Van Gisbergen could definitely still end up with that third Trackhouse seat, assuming they get it. SVG, multiple wins in the Xfinity series this year. He's at an age to where, I mean, he's no spring chicken. He came over from the Australian supercars, over 30 years old. So he's going to want a full-time cup ride soon, even though his oval skills still aren't quite where they need to be. But if he just gets one win on a road course, he's in the playoffs, and I would think he'd continue to hone in on his oval skills. They did an interview recently with Jimmy Johnson, and he was saying he wished he had more time in IndyCar because with a new vehicle, he says it takes optimally 5 years to really master a new vehicle. So SVG only in his second NASCAR season, his first full-time season. So he's going to have to adapt quicker than most have been able to, but I wouldn't put it past him. This dude's super talented, one of the best Australian supercars drivers. So I would think Trackhouse would take the chance on him next year, although the Zane Smith thing could complicate things. But we'll see. We'll have more on that as we go down the list here. The rumors of Kaulig being merged or sold to Trackhouse, those were ramped up back a few months back. I haven't heard much about that recently. I would think Kaulig would stick around as a 2-car team, and that Trackhouse will probably expand to 3. Maybe they'll emerge eventually because Trackhouse hadn't really been performing very well this season. So maybe they'll eventually have to emerge to help each other out. But I think for now they'll stay separate and just keep an alliance there. And then drivers in contract years expected to stay where they are: Austin Cindric, Bubba, Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez. He had only one of these 4 I could see possibly jumping ship is Eric Jones because of the way Legacy Motor Club has just been so stuck in the mud this season. Eric Jones is at an age where he's probably like, damn, I'm supposed to be in like the prime of my career, and I'm driving for this team that's not anywhere close to being up with the leaders. But I would think he'd stick it out. He's not that old. I don't even think he's 30 years old yet. So he's still got plenty of time. I would think he'd stick around there and continue to help build Legacy Motor Club. And of course, the 41 sticking around, but the other 3 Stewart-Haas teams shutting down. All those guys found new rides, though. Front row expanding to 3 teams. That's confirmed. The other ones in the mix: Trackhouse 2311. Those are almost certainly going to be the ones because Legacy Motor Club, they just aren't where they need to be. They would be silly for them to start a 3rd team. Same with Richard Childress Racing. I mean, RCR has been a dumpster fire this year. I mean, I'm repping the Kyle Busch 8, man. I'm about ready for him to change numbers, man. It is not working out at RCR. That's a dying organization. Richard Childress is just not it, bro. Like, Austin Dillon should not be in that seat full time. And then they had the nerve to put Ty Dillon in the 3rd car. I'm just like, RC, bro, you need to just hang it up, bro. Like, Richard Childress ain't it, man. I'll be so glad when Kyle Busch gets out of there. Unfortunately, though, he's probably stuck for 2025 because he's under contract. But yeah, I don't see RCR expanding. They'd be foolish. They can't even get it right with their 2 current cars. So if anything, RFK Racing could be the dark horse to expand to 3, but I would think it'd be 2311 in Trackhouse. But here we go, y'all. We're going to go down the chart here. Shout out to NASCAR Silly season site. Been going to them since I was very young. I think I discovered them in like 07 or 08, and they've been keeping it real. So yeah, shout out to NASCAR. Ross Chastain, our first driver to talk about, looking like he's going to stick around. He's had kind of a down year this year, but he signed through 2025 and beyond with Trackhouse. Has steady sponsorship there from Busch, Moose Fraternity, Jockey, a bunch of big brands there that sponsor him. So he's all good, at least through next season. Kind of a down year this year, like I said, but he's got a lot of talent. I think he'll bounce back there in that 1 car. Austin Cindric, not sure if they finalized his contract yet, but he's almost certainly going to return. That win that he got a few weeks back saved his butt, because if it wasn't for that, man, it'd be a lot more rumors probably about him losing that seat. But even if he hadn't gotten a win, I still think he'd have gotten a run here at least one more year. That's a long-term play for Penske, especially since he's Tim Cindric's son. So, yeah, he's going to keep that seat at least another few years. But he needs to pick up his performance if he wants to keep that thing for more than just the next couple of years. Because if he doesn't start driving more consistently, the Penske's a top-notch organization. They might just put Josh Berry in that 2 car if he does well with the Wood brothers, because that's a Penske affiliated team there. And then Austin Dillon, he's expected to stick around at least through 2025. I feel like if he sucks really bad again next year, he's gonna just have to retire. Like, he's gonna have to step away because he has just gotten embarrassingly awful. But he's got sponsorship, so he's going to probably stick it out at least one more year. So, man, just hard to be optimistic about RCR. No 4-car, Josh Berry leaving. Probably not going to be a 4-car on the grid next year. So next up is the 5. Kyle Larson signed through 2026. Valvoline extended their sponsorship long-term as a 3-race sponsor. Probably still going to be HendrickCars.com. Surprised they haven't been able to get more than just them because, Kyle Larson, he's the best in the game right now. So, yeah, he'll be around for the long haul. And that 5-car, Brad Keselowski, he'll be around for a while, I would think, considering his performance has picked up each year he's been an owner-driver at RFK. So he's at an age where I would think he'd run here at least another 3, 4, maybe 5 more years. So, and he's got sponsorship, so no worries about Brad K. Here's our first question mark, though, to number 7. Spire Motorsports, Corey LaJoie released unexpectedly here just this week. I was like, wow, crazy stuff considering they just signed Rodney Childers to a multi-year deal in early July, and they had re-signed LaJoie to a multi-year deal. Man, they must have really had to pay LaJoie a nice buyout. I remember his co-host on the Stacking Pennies said that he's like, hey, even if everyone's saying he's might lose his ride, well, if he loses his ride, he'll collect a nice paycheck, and I'm sure he did, being that they had to buy him out. So he might not even worry about running next year because he'll have enough money. But I would think LaJoie, he's a racer. He'll probably land on his feet somewhere in Xfinity or trucks or part-time Cup ride. But as far as who's going to replace him, it's kind of interesting. All social media keeps saying Kyle Busch, but I don't see it. I think Kyle Busch is stuck with RCR at least one more year. As much as I hate to say it, I'm completely done with RCR. I want him out of there, but he's going to have to stick it out one more year. And Randall Burnett is a pretty good crew chief. Maybe they could figure things out there for the short term, but for long term, I don't see him staying at RCR. So this is what I think could happen here. For those that want to entertain the Kyle Busch stuff, all right, let's entertain it. Let's just say he comes here in 2026. So you can get Kyle Busch for 2026 and beyond. You just need a 1-year rental. And who would you have for that? Well, Zane Smith. You got Zane Smith on the 1-year rental this season. Why not just bring him back for another year? Keep him in that 71 car. Put McDowell in this seat. Or you could just put Smith in this seat if you plan on putting Kyle Busch in this seat. And if you want to build McDowell around the 71 team, you could do that as well. You got options. But if you want to just have this as a stopgap, if you plan on trying to get Kyle Busch in 2026, because I don't think that's a guarantee. I think the Kyle Busch free agency sweepstakes will be popping. I think 23-11. That's another reason why I mentioned earlier why I think 23-11 could just be a part-time, as far as a seat that's full-time but with part-time drivers. I think that a big reason for that is because I think they're going to go after Kyle Busch in 2026. Denny Hamlin having been his teammate for over a decade at JGR, and his brother Kurt still an advisor at 23-11. So I think there's going to be a bidding war for Kyle Busch for 2026 between Spire and 23-11. So with that being said, it's like if you do this plan, it is a little risky. Although, if you swing and miss on Kyle Busch, you could sign. You could theoretically steal Corey Heim out of the Toyota pipeline, go with a younger driver or bring in like a Sam Mayer, a Christian Eckes, someone like that. But, for this season, though, it's just, there's all kind of guys that could take this seat. Theoretically, Eric Jones could get it if Eric Jones wants to try to get in a seat that's a little more competitive. SVG, they could do, if Zane Smith ends up going to the third Trackhouse seat, you could put SVG in this seat theoretically, or have multiple drivers in this seat. Have SVG run it, let Raja Karuth get some Cup experience. Let it be a shared ride between like SVG, Raja, and Sam Mayer potentially. But there's a lot. Riley Herbst's name could come up if they need sponsorship, but I don't think they'll need to worry about him bringing funding as they got the Gainbridge backing. So, I think the most likely route here is Zane Smith. I think he returns just on the 1-year deal. And then for 2026, they're going to either bring in Kyle Busch or a young guy and then build the team like that. So Spire's in a good spot. I think they made the right move by releasing LaJoie. I know it was kind of hasty. Maybe they could have kept him one more year, but maybe Trackhouse told him, like, hey, let's keep this lease thing going. And because of that, I don't think they expected to keep Zane Smith. Well, they obviously didn't. They signed McDowell to replace him. They were expecting him to be out the door, but because of now a logjam there, they were probably just like, well, Zane Smith's been performing well lately. Corey LaJoie hasn't. And Zane Smith's younger. And by getting LaJoie out the door, that gives us a shot to land a bigger name, such as a Kyle Busch in 2026. And, there could be some other big names that hit the market in 2026 for all we know. So we'll see. But yeah, Kyle Busch, definitely the obvious one. And it's fitting we get to him here in the 8th. And I think he's stuck because, a lot of these sponsors are signed through 2025. So like Cheddar's, for example. And so I think he has to stick it out. I don't think he gets bought out. Spire's been spending like crazy. Some people, they'll just buy him out. But I don't think they can afford that. Plus, RC is so petty, bro. After what happened with Tyler Reddick, I don't think there's any way he allows Kyle Busch to get bought out. I think Kyle Busch is stuck. I think it'll be similar to the Tyler Reddick thing where he'll just be a lame duck for a year and then he'll just, once his free agency opens, it's like, well, then he's a free agent. So yeah, I don't see any way of him unless he miraculously turns his performance around with RCR and has some like Cinderella run here down the stretch. I don't see any way of him staying with them beyond 2025. I think he's fed up. You can just see he's miserable over there. The car sucks. It's terrible. I'm just so sick of it as a fan of his. And I'll admit though, some of it probably has been his fault because it's like he's just got to accept that the cars are mid. It's like just get the best result you can get. Just settle for top 10s. If he'd have played this smarter, he maybe could have pointed his way into the playoffs. But because he's been driving so reckless, he's probably going to miss the playoffs now. So I don't think he's 100% blameless here. But the bottom line is that if he had better equipment, he wouldn't be in this spot. So we'll see where he ends up. A third 2311 car, a Spire car would probably be better, but I don't know, man. KB, it's challenging times, but I think for 2025, he's just got to accept that he's going to stay at RC, and then he'll have another free agency tour. I would think 2311 and Spire would be the only ones interested. Hendrick, they've got their guys on lock, and same with JGR. They're not going to be worried about signing Kyle Busch. The only way I could maybe see JGR happening would be if Denny Hamlin, instead of staying at JGR, decides to do the third 2311 seat. And then if Hamlin's seat opens up, then, maybe if the sponsorship lines up. But I don't know. I have a feeling Hamlin's probably just going to retire at JGR, considering he's got the FedEx deal. That's one of the fattest sponsorship deals in all of Cup Series. So I would think he just stays, and then Kyle Busch would then get that third 2311 seat, if they can pony up the money, because Spire's good. That's a good thing. If I'm Kyle Busch, I'm licking my chops, as far as that 2025 free agency, because you got Spire and 2311 bidding for you. He's going to get himself at least one more fat contract before he hangs it up, and he's needs the money to keep supporting his son Brexton, so he's definitely still wanting to stay involved in racing and all that. So don't see Kyle Busch going anywhere for 2025, but I think after that contract ends with RCR, he'll be on the move. But enough Kyle Busch talk. Let's move on to the rest of the grid. Chase Elliott, he'll be around 2027 extended. Napa's good with him. That's as steady of a deal as it gets. So don't need to say any more about that. He did lose Hooters as a sponsor, but that wasn't his fault. That was just Hooters. They're just not profitable anymore. Anyway, Denny Hamlin, another one that's got a real steady sponsorship deal from FedEx. Has to have some other deals, though, because FedEx did cut back the amount of races they sponsor, as Mavis Tire, Sport Clips, Interstate. I don't think they'd all stick around. Chris Gabehart, one of the best crew chiefs, so I don't see any changes for Denny. Ryan Blaney, defending Cup Series champion. Not sure how long his contract's good for, but I would think he'd stick it out with Penske, has steady sponsorship from Menards, but you never know. If Menards follows him somewhere, he could theoretically, like if Hamlin would leave Gibbs, Gibbs, I'm sure would love to bring Ryan Blaney over, because Ryan Blaney he's done really well with Penske. I think they want to keep him, but he's a little rough around the edges for a Penske guy. It seems like, he's a little more outspoken than a typical Penske driver. But he's not. But he knows when to tone it down. He's got a good balance to where I don't think Penske will get rid of him. It would be one of those things where if he feels Penske equipment isn't quite as good as JGR equipment, then maybe he jumps ship. But I doubt it. I think he'll be with Penske for the long haul, if I had to guess. Rick Ware Racing. All right, another open seat, the 15. Been split up this year between Kaz Grala, Riley Herbst, and Cody Ware. I would think they'll be in the bidding war for Riley Herbst, but I think Riley Herbst will have better options. So I doubt Rick Ware will be able to bring him on. So probably end up a split thing again unless they can throw together enough sponsorship to bring Ryan Preece over there. I would think that Preece would be a good fit here, be a good teammate to Justin Haley. It'll probably be a deal to where like Kaz Grala is getting the majority of the races this year. I would think they'll try to bring Preece in and let it be split between Preece, Grala, and Cody Ware. But if they can get it, like I said, if they can get it the funding for Preece, I think they just make him full-time. So, maybe they'll be able to. There's hope, if Preece can land with them full-time, wouldn't be that bad. But realistically, though, it might have to be a split ride again between Kaz Grala has been all right, but then Cody Ware it's rough over there. But I mean, somebody's got to be at the bottom of the grid, and unfortunately, his second Rick Ware car is one of the bottom feeders. But if they bring in Preece, might be a little stronger. Second colleague seat, the 31's been Daniel Hemrick full time in there. The 16's been split among a variety of drivers. SVG will probably get the third Trackhouse seat, so I would think this one will then instead be, Allmendinger is obviously going to be a big part of it. Ideally, Allmendinger would be full-time here. It's just he doesn't bring enough funding, so they need to bring other paid drivers in like Josh Williams, who's just been kind of underwhelming. Zane Smith, if the Spire deal doesn't get worked out, maybe they could put Zane Smith in here as like an on-lease from Trackhouse deal, but I would think he'd stay with Spire, so yeah, I think he'll just stick it out there. Corey LaJoie could get some seat time here, as well as Sam Mayer, if they want to bring in some drivers with a little more experience. Not sure if they'll bring any funding, though. So if they don't bring any funding, probably won't be able to get an opportunity to be in this seat, because I feel like with this seat, you got to bring some funding. So maybe Allmendinger could get more and get to be back full-time. I think AJ Allmendinger, it's a shame. Like, he deserves to be full-time. It's just the funding, though. It's kind of like Preece with Rick Ware. I think if he has funding, he'll be full-time, but I just don't know if he'll be able to scrap up enough to get it. And in this economy, I tend to doubt it. So, yeah, that Kaulig seat will probably be a bunch of guys again. Chris Buescher signed a multi-year deal, as well as Fastenal. They'll be together for a while. That's a steady deal there, RFK. Chris Buescher's had a lot of success ever since Keselowski bought into that team. Chase Briscoe signed a multi-year deal, take over this 19. Bass Pro Shop sticking around. That's good news for him, because I don't know what Mahindra's doing, his current sponsor. They might be getting out of the sport altogether. So if so, he's lucky that Bass Pro Shop stuck around there. So, yep, Chase Briscoe taking over for Truex, man. Pour one out for MTJ, retiring from full-time Cup racing. But I think he needs to retire. He seems to be kind of stressed. So he's been at it for so long, so shout out to MTJ. He had a great career, legendary career, future Hall of Famer, and he'll be around next year, part-time with 2311, probably going to run the Daytona 500 and a few other races. So we'll still see MTJ, just not in the full-time capacity. Christopher Bell, no changes expected. Yeah, he's got a very stable deal there. He's a franchise cornerstone over at JGR. Josh Berry, signed by Wood Brothers and, Penske-affiliated team there. Harrison Burton was not cutting it. He has been a disaster with Wood Brothers. They had to make a change. So Josh Berry, I think he'll do well. Surprised they didn't bring Rodney Childers over, though. Jeremy Bullins looks like he's going to stay as the crew chief there. So disappointed they couldn't keep the Berry-Childers duo together. But, Spire, they've got the big pocketbooks. Maybe they tried to bring him over and Spire outbid him. So we'll see. But yeah, I think Barry will do okay here. I think he'll definitely be better than Burton, but will he be able to be a consistent winner here? It might be tough. But maybe if he does well here and Austin Cindric keeps struggling, maybe he'll eventually get the third Penske car. But, Wood Brothers, I think they're at 99 wins as an organization. So it would be nice to see Josh Berry get him that 100th win, considering he's got a great underdog story coming up through the Cars Tour, an unconventional path to a full-time Cup ride at over 30 years old. So Josh Berry, a fun driver to root for. I wish him the best at Wood Brothers. Joey Logano, long-term contract with Penske, as well as Shell Pennzoil. No changes there for the two-time champ. Bubba Wallace, has he? Oh, he signed a multi-year deal in 2022. I don't think he signed his new deal yet, but assuming he keeps most of his sponsors, which is looking like he will. So, sure, if the money funding's there, he'll stick around. So, he's been performing better lately, too. He's almost in the playoffs. He's about to leapfrog Ross Chastain for that last pointed-in playoff spot. William Byron, signed through 2025, has plenty of sponsorship, no changes with Willie B. Daniel Hemrick, likely to return, I would think, considering he keeps his sponsors. You know, Kaulig's other cars, like the trophy car / pay driver car, but this is their full-time seat. So unless they could strike a deal with either Zane Smith or Shane Van Gisbergen and like another Trackhouse loan type thing, I would think Hemrick keeps his seat. Noah Gragson signed by Front Row Motorsports. Not sure if Loves is going to stick with this team or if they're going to go with McDowell. Not sure what they're doing, but, you know, Gregson going to go to this team. I think he'd get some Bass Pro Shops support. They seem to back him no matter where he goes. So, yeah, I think he'll be fine as far as funding. Looked like RCR was trying to get him as a possibility for a third seat, but I mean, RCR, they're not in position as our third team. So Noah Gragson made the right call here. Front Row, a team that's on the rise, as a key Ford partner team. So, yeah, I think Gragson should continue building and do well at Front Row. Their next car, though, to probably be number 36 for the third charter there. Well, Barry and Gregson, obviously not going to be it. Sam Mayer, Christian Eckes mentioned there. Although the Chevy development guys, I don't really think either of them are really Cup ready. You know, maybe Zane Smith could return to Front Row if the Trackhouse deal falls through, but I don't think they'll let him slip away. So I think the obvious candidate for this seat is Riley Herbst. You know, maybe Ryan Preece, but I think they'll go Riley Herbst because Riley Herbst, I think, will bring some funding from Monster. And I think this car is good. They're going to need somewhat of a pay driver for this seat. So I think Riley Herbst gets it if Herbst doesn't bring enough funding for the full-time seat, maybe then they split the ride amongst like him, Preece, kind of like Rick Ware. But I would think they'd get a full-time guy for this seat. So Riley Herbst is my prediction for that third front row seat because their other car, 38, Todd Gilliland, looking like he's set in stone for there. And he's done well in that seat this year. I believe he's 20th in points. He's improved a lot. He's been steadily improving each year. I think Front Row made a good decision to keep him in their organization. So, yeah, car number not announced, but I think he'd stay in that 38. Haas factory team, Cole Custer, we talked about him earlier. Some people were thinking he might get the Wood Brothers seat, but they got Josh Berry instead, so it made sense for Custer to go to the Haas factory team. John Hunter Nemechek, it's been a rough full-time year with Legacy, but they're in it for the long haul. They're building for the long haul, so no changes expected for JHN. Same with Eric Jones. You know, he doesn't have his contract finalized yet, but I don't think he'd stick around. It seems to have enough funding and all that because Eric Jones isn't a pay driver. He doesn't really bring funding, so with that being said, I don't think he'd just stick with Legacy. But he is very talented, so if someone can scrap together their own funding for him, maybe he jumps ship, like I mentioned earlier, maybe a Spire, but I doubt it. I expect him to stay at Legacy. Tyler Reddick, he's set in stone with 2311 for the long haul. No changes expected. Ricky Stenhouse signed a contract extension. The Kroger sponsorship might be leaving, but haven't heard anything about that since. When was this reported? In April that they might be going to JGR. Bass Pro Shop sticking around. I don't think any of the other cars are going to need sponsorship. So if I had to guess, Kroger will probably stay on that car at least one more year. And then maybe in 26, they'll follow somebody, maybe Kyle Busch to Spire. You never know. Or 2311. So we'll see what happens there. Alex Bowman, he signed long-term as well as Ally. So no changes there. He won a race finally this year, so he got a lot of the critics off his back as far as them saying he doesn't deserve that fourth Hendrick seat, but I think he'll keep that thing for a while. Third 2311 car, Riley Herbst, the favorite, according to the rumors, but I think he goes to Front Row. So that being said, I think this car ends up split between Martin Truex Jr., Corey Heim, and maybe Chandler Smith. I think if they do go at a full-time guy and they can get enough sponsorship, it'd be Corey Heim, get him full-time and into the Cup Series young, but I don't know if he's going to bring enough funding, so I think they'll probably just split it between him and Truex. Let Heim run the majority of the races, get his feet wet to where then for 2026, if they can't bring over Kyle Busch, then they could have Corey Heim ready for this season. If they do bring over Kyle Busch, then maybe Corey Heim could go to Legacy full-time for 26. If Eric Jones's performance doesn't perform, maybe then he would replace Eric Jones in that 43. He got some seat time there already and did pretty good, so yeah, I could see that, but I think for next season, probably be split between Heim, Truex, and maybe Chandler Smith for a few races. Just various Toyota development guys. Kyle Busch, they would love to have him, but like I said, he's stuck with RC for next year. So Justin Haley, he was rumored to be a possible Wood Brothers guy, but gonna stick it out with Rick Ware, it looks like, signed a multi-year deal there, so no changes expected for Haley. He has done pretty well with Rick Ware, exceeded expectations there in that 51. Ty Gibbs, he's a long-term piece for JGR, no changes expected. Guess he'll stick with number 54. I guess they're just keeping that 18 on the back burner just in case Kyle Busch would return, but I would think they'll just keep it on the back burner, and then when Kyle Busch retires, they'll bring it back to somebody, if I had to guess. But, because that's a number that's been in their organization a while. But Michael McDowell leaving front row at season's end for Spire was, announced to the 71. But with the Corey LaJoie news, maybe they'll put McDowell in the 7 and keep Zane Smith in the 71. They could pair McDowell with Rodney Childers. I'm sure he'd love that, being that Rodney Childers worked so well with Kevin Harvick and Josh Berry this year. So, we'll see what they do. But if I had to guess, I'll probably put McDowell in the 7 and keep Zay in the 71. And then for 26, if they bring in Kyle Busch, and they might put McDowell to the 71 and then put Kyle Busch in the 7 to pair him with Rodney Childers. But the stable car here is the 77, Carson Hocevar. He's their long-term cornerstone here. No changes expected. Young guys, had a successful rookie season outside of a couple temper tantrums that caused him to get some points penalties, but he's all right. He's just a very young driver. I think he's a good long-term building block piece here, so don't see any big changes coming to that 77 car. Third Trackhouse car, I would think SVG gets it. Maybe Zane Smith, and they put SVG in the Spire car. He just stays part-time with Kaulig, but I would think he gets the Trackhouse car, being that he gives them the best chance to win. And in this era with the playoffs, you need guys that have a good chance to win. Zane Smith's been better lately, but let's be real, he's never really come close to winning. Shane Van Gisbergen, every road course, street course you go to, he has a very good chance to win. And so in this playoff winning you're in era, I think they're going to want to get SVG a full-time seat sooner rather than later. And so that's my prediction. I think he gets the third Trackhouse seat, especially considering he has sponsorship from like WeatherTech, Wendy's. He's got major sponsorship backing. So I think because of those factors, he gets this seat. And in our last full-time charter team, another Trackhouse going to 99. Daniel Suarez doesn't have a contract yet, but I think he brings enough funding and has done well enough this season where he'll keep this seat. But it'll probably just be a one-year deal, because I think if he doesn't perform well in 2025, like if he misses the playoffs in 25, but let's be real, if it wasn't for that Atlanta win this year, he'd have probably missed the playoffs this year. But he's made the playoffs this year, so he'll probably keep the seat at least one more year. But if he doesn't perform in 25, I could see Zane Smith taking over there, and then it'd be Chastain, Zane Smith, and SVG, or maybe Kyle Busch. Maybe Trackhouse enters the Kyle Busch sweepstakes for 2026. You never know, although Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain definitely not friends, but let's be real, Ross Chastain not really friends with anybody. So we'll see how it all shakes out, y'all. But that's my take on the full-time Cup grid. We'll go over to part-time teams here real quick. Third RCR car, more than likely to stay part-time. Austin Hill, I'm sure, will continue to get seat time here. And then when Kyle Busch dips out inevitably after 25, I'm sure they'll promote Austin Hill to the Cup car for 2026. And if Austin Dillon retires, and Jesse Love will probably also get a cup seat too. So I would think there could be a chance that RCR just goes full on rebuild mode in 2026 if Kyle Busch leaves. Because Jesse Love, he'll probably get a few starts in that 33-2 next year, I would think, as well as probably stupid Ty Dillon. And those Australian supercars guys could get some starts on the road street courses. And maybe Corey LaJoie, as a petty, RC's petty. Maybe he'll be petty and force Kyle Busch to be teammates with Corey LaJoie for a few races next year. But more than likely just the Austin Hill seat, to continue developing him. NY Racing probably will run a few limited races, as well as the this 50 car. Maravet Racing, not sure who drove that this year. JJ Yaley, Greg Biffle to put some former Cup guy in there that's well past his prime. Those teams are just good luck. It's so tough to get in the Cup Series, man. You got to have serious cash. But the third RFK car, I think, will probably run more races. If Ryan Preece doesn't get a seat, I think they'll let him run a few races. Might be their Daytona 500 guy, as well as Kaz Grala if Rick Ware boots him in favor of Ryan Preece. Or maybe they just go back to David Reagan, get him some time. Or Haley Deegan, Haley Deegan, if she brings funding, she'll probably end up in a Stewart Haas Xfinity car. If I had to guess, she'll probably take Riley Herbst's spot, with Monster Energy backing. So maybe they'll give her a few starts, but she's got to perform better, man. She has been a disaster so far in Xfinity, but she brings funding, so we'll see. Beard Racing, I would think they'll stick with Anthony Alfredo. He's a decent little talent, so I would think he'll just stay with them for the super speedways since Austin Hill's got his deal with RCR. MBM, not sure what they'll do. BJ McLeod will probably stay, do the super speedways in the 78. Jimmy Johnson, the 84 Legacy. I'm not sure if he'll run. Maybe I would think if he runs, he'll probably just do the Daytona 500, and they'll probably let Corey Heim, Chandler Smith, they'll probably let younger guys run that third car, I would think, because I don't see what good it really does letting Jimmy Johnson run. I know he's a veteran, but it's like he is well past his prime. So, yeah, they made a bunch of changes there. Let go of Jason Burdett and a bunch of the guys over there. So if they do, they might not even mess with this car because he even admitted that running a third car kind of takes away some resources from the 43 and 42 teams. So wouldn't surprise me if this team folds, or just if they do come back, probably just let Jimmy run the Daytona 500. But maybe they'll strike a deal with 2311 to where the races Corey Heim can't run with 2311. Maybe then he'll be able to fill out the rest of his schedule with Legacy, kind of like the way Todd Gilliland in 2022 or 23 was able to. He ran most of his races with Front Row, but then was able to fill out his schedule with Rick Ware. So maybe it could be one of those kind of situations there. But, yeah, team shutting down these SHRs. We already went over all of them. 3 of the 4 have found homes. Not sure about Preece, but very least he'll probably get, like I said, that part-time seat with RFK. And you never know. He might be able to get some good results there. RFK, obviously very fast. So, yeah. All right, that's going to do it here. That's the silly season update. Ran kind of long, but a lot to talk about here, so got it all in here. Appreciate everyone that is tuned in. Sorry for the hiatus. We are back, though. Spencer Talks NASCAR. We're going to try to bring y'all an episode a week, each week through the end of the season, for the playoffs. So I know football's starting up. I do fantasy football content as well. Spencer the Guru. Make sure to check that out for those that play fantasy football. But for those NASCAR fans, yeah, I'm back, y'all. So, yeah, we'll catch y'all the next one.